Hey guys, welcome to our study today. We're going to be looking at an interesting aspect about the Enneagram. You know, all of us want to grow. I believe that if you're watching this video, then not only is the Enneagram important to you, but just general self-development, not being stuck in life and moving forward, having a path forward, and anything you want to put under that umbrella of self-development or developing yourself. I feel like most of you guys would have a lean toward that kind of thing, like I do. And I mean, why would you want to get worse? Why would you want to be worse? None of us would, right? We would want to improve our lives and our relationships. Well, if you ever feel stuck in your personal journey, no matter how hard you try, it just seems like you can't move forward. Here's the thing. One of the things I think the Enneagram helps us to see is that it's embracing our vulnerabilities, or maybe you could say the things we don't like about ourselves. Embracing that actually helps us to really grow. And even though it's painful and even though it's not pleasant, it's uncomfortable, it actually helps us to grow and really improves our lives and our relationships. So, when you think about vulnerability, what are we talking about? Well, the Enneagram reveals our core fears. Every type has motivations and has certain core fears that drive our behavior. Whether we realize it or not, these things are working behind the scenes and driving everything we do. So it's important that we catch this, understand it, and don't let those motivations limit us and keep us away from going after what we might say we really want in life. So here's the challenge. Knowing your type and knowing your patterns alone isn't enough. To truly grow, we have to go a little bit deeper. And this means embracing the very thing you often run from or run away from. Think like this. There's a boulder chasing you, and you may not really think about that as much as you're aware of what you're going after, what you want, what you intend to acquire. You may not even be clear about that either, but hopefully through this video, we'll clear that up. And also, gain the strength and the knowledge to turn around and face that boulder and not let it overwhelm us and push us in directions that aren't really where we want to end up. Or sometimes I'll say to take the dagger out and face the dragon that's chasing us. So vulnerability is like a gateway to growth because it's where we expose the part of ourselves that maybe is uncomfortable for us. So this is often where healing begins to happen. So today we're going to talk about why embracing vulnerability is crucial for your journey and for your self-development, your relationships, and all those things. I'm going to be looking at my notes because there's no way I can memorize all this all the time. So I'm going to go down these notes. And first thing I want to say is vulnerability breaks down walls that divide us from other people, and sometimes even in a sense divide us within ourselves. So the first point is that vulnerability breaks down these walls that we build around ourselves. Think we all have certain self-protective ways of interacting in this world. And why wouldn't we? I'm a fear type, right? 5, 6, and 7 fear types. The world's a scary place. And so since the world is a scary place, we develop these self-protective mechanisms, and it's kind of predictable what they're going to be based on our Enneagram type. Every Enneagram type has self-defense mechanisms. And I have other videos on my channel specific to each of the types, the self-defense strategy for each type. You can check those out. All right, so let's talk about a breakdown, we might say. Let's kind of go 1 through 9 real quick, and then, I've got a lot more information about how to face these dragons or face these boulders, but let's first identify what the boulders are, okay? So type 1, the reformer, the perfectionist, to avoid feeling flawed, they seek perfection. That feeling, that's the vulnerability, that feeling of not having things right, or there's something broken or wrong inside of me. And so to compensate for that, the self-protective strategy is perfectionism. Or you can say, run away. The boulder, I don't want to feel like a failure. I don't want to feel like like I'm flawed. So I'm chasing perfection. So type 1s often cope by being overly critical of themselves, and others. That's why we never criticize a 1. Aiming for perfection to avoid the discomfort of making mistakes or feeling bad. They may struggle with vulnerability because they fear exposing their imperfections. Okay, type 2, the helper, the giver. Giving love in order to avoid feeling needy myself. Like it feels awful to feel needy, or what are your needs? That can feel a little uncomfortable for a 2. So they focus on giving love as a way of avoiding their own sensitivity to their own needs. So neglecting their own needs, you might say. Offering love and support to avoid acknowledging their own desires or feeling like a burden to other people. They feel vulnerable when they need help themselves. Type 3s, the achiever. Success, chasing after success in order to avoid feeling unworthy or in order to avoid feeling like a failure. So type 3s try to achieve and excel in life in order to mask their fear of failure or of being seen as incompetent. Their vulnerability lies in their need to be admired, and and their value is based on their accomplishments. Okay, type 4, the individualist, intensifying their emotions in order to avoid feeling ordinary. Probably the worst thing you could say is, you're boring and unoriginal. I hate that too. I don't like that. But intensifying their emotions, dramatist, to avoid feeling ordinary. Type 4s can use emotional intensity. What does that look like? And what does that always bring you in your relationships? Does it always work the way you think it will? To avoid feeling like they don't matter or aren't special. They may dwell in deep emotions or create drama as a way to escape the fear of being seen as insignificant or ordinary or being misunderstood. Okay, type 5, the investigator, withdrawing to avoid feeling overwhelmed. Withdrawing away to protect your space, to avoid feeling intruded upon or overwhelmed by others. Type 5s detach from their emotions and withdraw to avoid feeling overstimulated or inadequate and not able to meet everybody's demands. They protect themselves by retreating into their thoughts and reserving their energy for fear of depletion. Like all these people are just going to, take all of your focus of your attention away and make demands on you. Remember, the sin is greed, right? Or avarice, stinginess. Type 6, the loyalist, over preparing to avoid feeling unsafe. Over preparing. Any of you 6s over prepare? You're kind of the classic homeroom mom. Does anybody need a granola bar? Get your backpack. Does anybody need a granola bar? Does anybody need a Band-Aid? Does anybody need some hand sanitizer? Over preparing to avoid feeling unsafe. The world's a scary place. It makes sense. I got a very strong 6 wing. I get this. Type 6s cope by constantly preparing for worst case scenarios. Seeking security and support to avoid feeling anxious or unprotected. Vulnerability arises when they are faced with uncertainty or trust issues. Do you trust me? Do you trust me? Probably nothing you can say worse to a 6, except you're safe. You're fine. Okay, type 7, the enthusiast, seeking new experiences to avoid feeling pain or boredom, you might say. Seeking new experiences, new purchases, new novelty. So type 7s often distract themselves. It's true. We distract ourselves with excitement, fun, new adventures, even new information. Like, look at all these books behind my shelf and all those diplomas, right? Because I love, what am I going to do if I'm not learning something? Am I going to sit here and look at the wall? So new adventures to avoid confronting difficult emotions or feeling trapped in discomfort. Vulnerability for them is sitting still and facing emotional pain or dissatisfaction. Sitting still. You don't think 7s are an anxiety type. Make them sit still and you'll see the anxiety, right? Pain, dissatisfaction. No thanks. Type 8, the challenger. Being tough to avoid feeling weak or helpless or not in control of your environment, disappointed, apprehensive. Type 8s adopt a strong, assertive persona to avoid being controlled or vulnerable. The fear of being hurt or betrayed is so strong that they project strength and dominance to keep others at a distance, maybe sometimes. So big, tough, strong, don't mess with me. All right. Type 9, the peacemaker, avoiding conflict in order to avoid feeling disconnected. Remember, the fear is of being fragmented, of disconnection. Everybody's upset with each other. So avoiding conflict. Type 9s avoid conflict and tension or awkwardness at all costs to keep the peace in order to try to feel connected to others and not to feel disconnected from others. So maybe you take too much from people. Their vulnerability comes from a fear of disconnection. So they merge with others' opinions to avoid rocking the boat. So every type has these defense mechanisms that I've just summarized that sort of guard against our deepest fears. Like, I don't want this to happen so badly that I will overcompensate, you might say. But embracing that vulnerability is where growth and deeper growth and emotional maturity might begin. Okay, so here's the problem. These defense mechanisms become walls that can keep us stuck. Keep us in certain patterns on the treadmill and nothing really changes. And when we just embrace that vulnerability, and like I said in another video, every type has something to grieve. When we can start to grieve this loss that we're never fully going to feel completely in control of our environment. We're never really going to feel like everything is perfected, or that we have all the love that we could want, or that we are never going to fail. We're never going to really get to that point where we're going to feel like we could let our guard down. So we might as well go ahead and let our guard down. So these walls start to develop around us. And when we can admit things like, I don't have it all together and I need help. Look, the Enneagram doesn't teach us how to save ourselves. It just teaches us, it shows us our brokenness. I mean, we see our strengths, but we also see the dark side, right? We see that mirror side that is uncomfortable, that exposes our vulnerabilities. I don't have it all together. Like, when you can go ahead and admit that, think how much easier your life could be. If you have to project all the time that you have it together and that you've covered every base, it's so much easier and so much more relaxing in life when you can just say out loud, things are never going to be as good as I want them to be, and I'm never going to live up to the standards that I wish I could, and I have needs, and I'm in some ways kind of pathetic. When we can go ahead and say that out loud instead of covering all the time so that nobody sees. I mean, think how anxious and burdened we would be if we're always trying to cover everything, like Adam and Eve trying to cover themselves. So it's uncomfortable, but real growth doesn't happen as long as we stay hidden, and as long as we stay guarded, and as long as we stay in our comfort zones. We got to break out of this comfort zone. And that's going to mean turning around and facing the dragon, turning around and facing our vulnerability. And actually, it's our vulnerability that connects us with other people sometimes. Like, when people see that people know you're not perfect. They're just tired of you pretending, right? So you can either pretend or you can be real. And it's hard to make a relationship with somebody who's pretending all the time. It's much easier to make a relationship with somebody who's real. Even if you're flawed, everybody knows you're flawed. Nobody sees it more than others, right? They see your flaws. Like, you're not fooling anybody. And if you can just go ahead and embrace that, then people could actually have a relationship with you because you would be real. You would be genuine. We're so focused on being polished, on being better, or being the best version of ourselves. The best version of yourself. Key word, yourself. Yourself. Not the best version of this plastic image of yourself. But who are you, really? Who are you now that you think you know who you are? Because we're all trying to get to know you. And if you could let your guard down a little bit, we might be able to have a relationship with you. So our culture, promotes self-reliance and independence and strength and capabilities and all these wonderful things. Like, that's what we project up there, as this is the ideal. But the reality is we're all kind of screwed up messes. I mean, that's the reality. And you're not alone in this. If you think, gosh, I feel like such an idiot, I feel like a screwed up mess, everybody else, no, everybody else is too. Everybody else is. Okay. So when you allow yourself to admit these things and face these things, look, real growth can now happen because you're not pretending anymore. You create actually space for other people to connect with you and meet you in your struggle. So this is especially true in relationships, whether it's romantic or whether it's family or whether it's just friends at work. So your vulnerabilities allow people to experience the real you and not the polished, filtered version of you. Now, I get it. Sometimes, like when you're up on stage, maybe you have to present to make a sale or whatever bull crap you got to do in life. Sometimes you got to present that best version of yourself. But the reality is like people just want to get to know you. And they know that you have flaws. They know you have failures. And so if we're taking example type 3, okay, who's used to projecting success and confidence, okay, they might feel weak admitting that they're really struggling with being accepted and they just want to have friends and connections. And so they're working really hard, to get that Letterman's jacket. I don't know if that's still a thing, but it's kind of my generation. Working hard to be the quarterback or to be the head cheerleader or whatever it is. But, in that moment of honesty, when you can actually admit, I just want to have friends. Like, I feel disconnected. I feel like I want to have friends. That's probably the moment when real, genuine people are most likely to want to be your friend. I know you're probably like, oh, that feels pathetic. It feels pathetic to people who are always fake and phony, but it feels amazing to people who want honest, deep, real connections. So what do you want? Do you want to be popular or do you want to actually have real friends? Vulnerability invites other people into the journey with you, and their support can help propel you forward. So the last thing I kind of want to say is vulnerability, accepting that and embracing that I'm kind of a screwed up mess and the people around me are all kind of screwed up messes. But we're all getting through this together. Dear Lord, we please, we need your help. Embracing vulnerability really is the beginning point to real transformation in your life. Finally, embracing vulnerability leads to true transformation. When you're vulnerable, you're able to face the parts of yourself that you would rather ignore, rather deny, rather cover up and pretend weren't there. Well, okay. You've been doing that a long time and it gets exhausting and you can't have real friends when you're doing that. So the Enneagram teaches us, our shadow side, your shadow side, the part of you that you like to hide because it's too painful to confront. When you embrace vulnerability, you begin to confront the shadows, the shadow side, and that's where real transformation happens. So type 1s, for instance, who often avoid admitting their own imperfections because they don't want to be wrong or bad, or inferior in some way. But once they face this fear and can just admit it out loud, I'm imperfect and that's okay. I'm a work in progress, however you want to say it. But once they can admit that, and, look at how that softens them. It's hard to be angry and yell at others for being imperfect when you admit yourself, I know what it's like to be imperfect. They can begin to experience grace and self-acceptance and freedom. So the same is true for every type. When we're willing to face that vulnerability, we begin to unlock the potential for real transformation. So I know it sounds kind of scary. I know it may even be really confusing. You may be like, I don't know that I get this fully. Well, that's okay. Just keep growing, keep learning, keep watching videos, keep reading. I'm always available for coaching if you want to work through some of this in your own life. But I know it sounds scary because no one likes feeling vulnerable. Like you have some weakness or some shortcomings or something. But here's the truth. The things you're most afraid to admit and are most hesitant to reveal are the very things that are holding you back from real growth, real connection with others, and from reaching the life that you desire. Embracing vulnerability isn't about being weak, or I need to make myself look weak in front of people so that they pity me and they feel sorry for me. My life is so bad. No, that's not what this is about. It's about being courageous enough to face the dragon that hides in your closet. It's about being strong enough courageous enough to turn around and push that boulder back a little bit to get some space between you and this operating default personality profile, whatever it is that's pushing you, to create a little bit of space and take a breath for a second and say, man, this is exhausting all the time. So I'm willing to feel uncomfortable if it means that I'm going to grow. Imagine what could happen if you could stop hiding behind all of these, what do you want to call it? Your strengths, your Enneagram type, and instead learn to face the very thing that scares you the most. Like, for example, a 7, sitting still for 30 minutes and doing nothing and not scrolling, shopping online. I mean, just sitting still and letting yourself catch up to yourself, letting your mind slow down for a minute. What might I feel? Boredom? Pain? What if your vulnerability, embracing that, was the key to breaking through barriers that you've been stuck behind for a long time? That's what we're talking about. So here's the challenge. Let's all decide, okay, I'm going to try to relax a little bit. I'm going to hit my Jimmy Buffett button, my Kenny Chesney button for a second, take a deep breath, and stop trying to be such a fake person and try to be more genuine and real with myself and with others. It might involve prayer or meditation. It might involve coaching or counseling. It might involve mindfulness and awareness. But whatever type you are on the Enneagram, you have a core fear. You have a core weakness. You can read about them in any book on the Enneagram virtually, or all of these videos that I've made. But your vulnerability is what allows you to face those things head on. So start small. Maybe it's admitting that you need help, that you can't do everything on your own. And don't do this out of anger. I can't do everything on my own. I need somebody around here to help me. That's not what we're talking about. Dr. Tom says I need to tell everybody that you've got to help me. That's not it, okay? It's not going to start with anger, with all this bitterness that's piled up inside you because you haven't taken care of yourself. That's not what we're talking about. It's admitting that you're not as strong as you would like people to think. It's starting with, adopting that one man down position. And maybe it's confessing that you've been afraid of failure, or afraid that other people would not accept you or would not appreciate you. And maybe you have been struggling in ways that you haven't been able to face or to share with others. Whatever it is, let's take that step. You'll be amazed at how much freedom and growth is on the other side of accepting this vulnerability in life. And you'll find that it's not the weakness that you thought it was, but it's actually a place of strength. And it takes courage to be able to do this and to be able to face this and admit this about ourselves and maybe to a few trusted others. Growth isn't about staying the same. It's not about doing what you've always done. It's about taking some risks and taking some challenges, about transformation. Transformation begins when you're willing to embrace your vulnerability. So go out there and take the next step, and watch your life begin to get a little bit more gracious, a little bit more happy, a little more joy in your life, a little more peaceful in your life. And the people that are really for you and really care about you are not going to leave you because you open yourself up to them. There may be a few jerks out there that aren't really for you, that will no longer see you as a tool they can use to get ahead in life. And that's okay. Let them move on. Let them move on. You don't really need them in your life. The people that really love you and care about you, will be happy that Ebenezer Scrooge woke up a changed man. Okay. Take care, guys. We're all in this together. We're going to move step by step. And as always, be present to life. And I'll see you next time.